Hello, everybody. Did I do a good enough job, Michelle?
Nailed it.
All right. Well, we are here this week with Michelle
Hello.
and Christina Julian, and we're going to talk about her fabulous new book coming out called The Dating Vendor. Hello.
Hi, girls. How are you?
We are good. So, this is exciting. This is your first book.
It is.
And it's coming out on the 22nd. How excited are you right now?
I'm very excited. I think I have a mix of half panic, half excitement, but it's a lot of excitement.
So tell us a little bit about the book itself.
Well, the book, it's a romantic comedy, and it's kind of a rollicking traveling adventure. A woman, Samantha, who's kind of the lead character in the book, is on a kind of a mad dash quest to find true love, and she gets horribly lost along the way. She's a little quirky, a little crazy, some would say a hot mess of the highest. And she is just kind of trying to figure it out, but messing up royally along the way. So it's definitely a comedy, kind of a dark black comedy, I guess you could call it. And she goes to a lot of fabulous places. She starts off, the book opens in kind of a shotgun wedding that also goes horribly awry. And she's raised in a very kind of devout Catholic upbringing, and it sort of has disastrous results on her relationships, and the marriage turns out to be very short-lived, and then the dating bender ensues, and she kind of is escaping her family and her life, and she goes to Florida, Colorado, Manhattan, and then there's a big kind of showdown in Rome at the Vatican.
I picture a showdown in Rome and the Vatican being somewhat like the movie Euro Trip, where you end up.
Yeah, this is her trip to Rome is definitely laden with trouble, and she is definitely at a kind of very hot mess alert when she's in Rome, and it just kind of unravels from there.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It is, yeah, and there's a lot of she relies she does drink a lot. Her and her gal pals do throw back a lot of drinks over the course of the book, and she kind of starts off as a mad dog drinker. And then her tastes in men and wine and things do kind of get a little more refined over the course of the book. And she kind of, she has some figuring it out and growing up to do. And she does, work hard at doing that.
So are there any real life inspirations for this? Girls got to ask, right?
Yeah, it is. I think that I was raised in a Catholic household, not a really strict devout Catholic upbringing, but I was raised. I call myself a recovering Catholic. So all of those kind of the cliches that you hear about Catholic and no sex before marriage and go to church all the time, but yet then kind of there's kind of a hypocritical side of that, of Catholics are sometimes behaving badly, and so I grew up in that kind of environment, and so I think the book plays a little bit off of that, of what it's like to have that kind of upbringing and be sort of torn between who you want to be and who your family wants you to be, and how you kind of reconcile that stuff. And I think in my 20s and even into my 30s, I was just trying to figure it out, and I was in a mad quest to how do I reconcile being on my own. And I kind of, my first jobs out of college were when the .com sort of craze was happening, before the boom, during the boom, after the boom. And it was a really kind of amazing and crazy time to be 20 and working. And so that's definitely, there's a thread of that in the book, because I think it was like, there was nothing quite like that experience. It was very manic and fun, and also very at the same time. So I think there's, you know, kind of kernels of what has happened to me in life are, you know, threaded throughout the book, as well as kind of, you know, the lead character, Samantha. People ask, is that you? Is that you? And I'm like, I hope that that's not me, because boy, I'm a big, huge hot mess. And I would say I'm a mini hot mess, not a full-blown hot mess, but but it's kind of an amalgamation of you know, me friends, people I've met along the way. I lived in New York and Los Angeles for a time, and you know, it's just a feeding frenzy of interesting things and people and happening and dates, and just, you know, a lot of crazy things went down. And so some of those things make it into the book in a very heightened, you know, the stakes are raised much higher in the book than in real life.
Yeah, you never really want, I mean, sometimes with the characters that we write, and people are like, oh, is that you? Are you in there? And sometimes it's like, yeah, I created this hot mess. I don't want to be this hot mess. Yeah. My life really isn't this much of a mess.
Right, exactly. If I had all of the hijinks and fun that Samantha had, I mean, I would have really had a super amazing life. So of writing is you can kind of sort of take a small situation and just sort of, I read something, I can't remember where it was, but someone talked about how being a writer is a great thing, that you can write the life that you want to live, or that you wished you lived, or that you wish you didn't live. You know, it's kind of your opportunity to become all the people you wish you could be, but in real life you can't, but you can write about it. So I think that I love that kind of philosophy and style of of fiction writing.
Absolutely.
I think that, you know, the saying, oh, I'm going to butcher it, and it's not anywhere close to what I'm about to say, but it's, you know, don't piss off a writer because they'll kill you in their book, or something to that effect. It's like bad dates. Like, you don't want, like, I think all guys should be aware that if they are an awful date or a bad date with a writer, they could end up in a romantic comedy.
Yes.
And have their bad dateness just expounded.
Bad dateness.
Bad dateness. It's a thing.
It's kind of buyer beware, dater beware. Yes, because in dating a writer, you are, you know, it's all, Nora Ephron, I think, has a great quote that I always steal and post and tweet about all the time, because I love it. Like, everything is copy. And I think that that's, you know, sort of a nice way of saying it's all sort of fair game. And you know that going into it. So.
And then you marry writers, and it's
the
disclaimer continues.
Oh, right. Yeah. There is nothing sacred once you marry a writer.
I know. Yeah. Unfortunately,
it only gets worse when you have to deal with the undone dishes and piled up laundry when they're on a writing binge.
Yeah, it's very true. It's hard. The writer, I imagine. My husband is an engineer, and he's the one that has to deal with living with me.
Yes, my husband, he has to deal with living with me too, and he's, you know, I always hear, he's like, you know, after like a week, and he comes home and he's like, so babe, on another writing binge, are we? It's like, yeah, I'll take a break and do the dishes and the laundry, I swear.
No, when you're in the zone, you just have to stay in the zone.
Exactly. So one of the reasons why we wanted to have Christina on the show is basically after I saw her profile and stuff, we realized she was basically our long lost sister. With the book, which is a really fun book, which is something, you know, Michelle and I like to read, and then also with the wine, because before this, and I'm assuming continually, you were a food and wine writer.
I am, yes. I used to work in advertising, and I just kind of had lived in all the big cities, and I used to have a friend that I worked with in LA that I worked with, and she got really burnt out in LA and quit her job and moved to the wine country to become a massage therapist. And I always was looking for an excuse to kind of get out of LA and do something. So I used to visit her all of the time. And I ended up really just like, wow, I really kind of like it up here. Yeah, one day I'm going to go live there. I think it seems like a great place to live. And at a certain point, I just was like, I'm kind of tired of the advertising scene. The wine country was calling. And so, yeah, I quit my job and I moved up here with the hope to start writing about wine. And I met a really kind of the son of a very well-known winemaker out here in Napa Valley, was one of the very first people I ran, just kind of ran into by happenstance. And he's just his name's Kirk Vengi, and his dad was the first winemaker in Napa Valley to get a perfect 100 score from Robert Parker, the wine enthusiast. And so his dad is very famous in the Valley, and Kirk was kind of breaking out on his own and opening his own winery. And he knew that I was new in town and I wanted to learn about wine. And so he invited me to come work and harvest with him for a season. And it just kind of, that's sort of how it all began. I just sort of fell in love with just the whole idea of wine and harvest. And I really kind of learned everything I learned on the tasting trail, as he would like to call it, and picking grapes and sampling them and testing them and drinking the wine and kind of everything that goes with it. And because he was who he was, and I got to write about my time working in harvest and then about his winery. And that's really how I started writing about wine. And when you live out here and there's 400 plus wineries, it all kind of snowballs. So I
can't go wrong with that.
No. So I learned in the field in every kind of sense of the word.
And that's good. And that's kind of the best way to learn something is doing it.
Yeah. And I feel like before I ever really started writing about wine, I definitely enjoyed wine, and I was, into food and into wine, and was just always very curious about it. But actually kind of working in the behind the scenes kind of process of all of it, I think it made writing about it just so much easier, because I could write about it as a consumer and a drinker of wine, lover of wine. But then I could also write about like kind of everything that goes along with it. So I think it was like, had I not done the whole harvest tour of duty, I think that, my writing about wine would be a lot different, just because, with that experience, just the smell, like, I don't know if you guys have ever, have been out here, but during this time of year, harvest is starting right now. And it smells like crushed grapes. Like, everyone talks about harvest, but there's a smell, and there's a certain part of Napa in Oakville where you drive through it in like September and October, and it's just this whiff of crushed grapes, and there's nothing quite like it. So
love it. So now, with that being said, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking one of my favorite wines, which is Kirk's wine, and it's called, I'll show it. I have a bottle of it here. Can you see that? It's Vengi Vineyards, and that's in Calistoga, which is where I live actually also. And this wine, it's a red blend, and this is the wine I actually kind of sort of picked as like a wine that I would say sort of goes with the dating bender, because it's a hodgepodge wine. It's a red blend. And I think a lot of times people think, oh, a red blend, does that mean like a cheap wine? Or, it's kind of, it doesn't know what it wants to be when it grows up, but it's really kind of quite the opposite. It's a blend of Zinfandel, Petit Syrah, Charbonneau, and Syrah. And it's an amazing wine. It's just really, it's very structured, and it's complicated on the one hand, but it's also just really a very kind of fruit forward wine. And it's one moment you drink it, the next you drink it, it tastes a little different as you continue to drink it. So it's probably one of, if I had to pick one of my favorite wines, it would be one of them.
That's interesting with the blends like that. We have one of the authors that we're friends with, Scott Wilbanks, talking about a wine in New Zealand. And Michelle, do you remember the name, what they call it?
Come on, Scott.
It's like they take basically like the leftovers of all the different types of wines, and they put it together. And I want to say it's like sludge. Is it sludge? I think I'm getting closer. I don't know. I may have to follow up with them and find out. And they take the leftovers of everything, and then they bottle it up, and then they sell that. Is that what is a blend like that?
I mean, it is a blend, but a lot of time, you know, like for in this wine in particular, and it is the case of a lot of red wines, is it's a very deliberate blend. So, you know, when Kirk is making this wine, he's looking at it and it's like each Zinfandel, for example, and Petit Syrah are two very different wine varietals. They are complementary to each other. So I think that there are red blends out there that are truly just sort of a, you know, what's left and let's kind of toss it all together approach. But then I think there's a red blend like this that is very much the winemaker's kind of doing, you know, his version of a symphony and sort of taking the best, you know, grapes of the vineyard and the varietals that will kind of blend well together. And, you know, something like Syrah could overpower, you know, the wine if it was all Syrah, I love all Syrah myself, and many people do, but you know, he was going for kind of a subtle balance of like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but in a very deliberate way. So I think there are kind of the sludge style, probably red blend wines, and then there's red blends that are truly just kind of the winemaker is really deliberately going for kind of a specific taste and, you know, heft in the wine or just kind of something in particular that they have in mind, and then they like to blend that all together.
I think it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, I'm drinking one of my favorites. I was going to just go on to my wine, unless you had a question, Michelle.
No, what's your favorite wine? I would love to hear.
One of my favorites is Dark Horse. I've really fallen in love with this wine. They're out of, this one's out of California, and I think they are technically out of, I looked on their website. The website hits out Ontario, but I definitely think they're a California wine, and I really like their wines. The Pinot Noir is it's not too sweet because I hate sweet wines.
Yeah,
but it's nice and light, and it's got a really good flavor.
And is it it's a Pinot, or what is it?
Yeah, it's a Pinot Noir.
Okay.
They're kind of a small winery, I think, because they just came out with a rosé, which I think is limited release. And then they've got Pinot Grigio. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle. Don't they have I think they have a Chardonnay too. And then they have
they do. We always get excited when we find the different ones. We send each other text messages of pictures from wine racks and random stores. And today I found an entire wall of Dark Horse in the food store that I was in, so it was an exciting moment for us.
Yes, and it was funny is that it was on sale for her for $8.99, and I was like, oh man, that's a really great price. And it's a food store that's only in North Carolina, so I can't go get it. And then so today I stopped off at Target and I went and checked out the wine at Target, and it was $7.99 on sale at Target. So I had to send her a picture of it and be like, I beat you.
That's a good deal.
It is. And Michelle, how about you?
Well, I was going to get Dark Horse, but, and I'm right now, usually when we first started Wine Women Awards, we were both in California. I was in San Diego and Diana's up in the Los Angeles area. Since then, I relocated to Chicago, and right now I'm in North Carolina in the Outer Banks. So there's a whole lot of travel, and the good thing about that is I get to see all kinds of wines that I've never seen before. And one of them it's called Hero and Villain. It looks like this.
Oh.
And I bought it strictly because of the label. So I had no idea what to expect. I thought when you were describing your wine, Christina, you mentioned that it was a fruit-forward wine, which I thought was a really interesting description because my knowledge of wine is good or bad. Like, that's how I know how to describe wine. I would love to get to the level where I can describe it as, you know, the words that you always hear, like full-bodied or fruit-forward, you know, the words that people who know about wine know to use.
Yes, teach us a wise one.
Yeah. Well, and I have kind of a funny philosophy about this because when people do, which I guess is what people probably expect people in Napa Valley to do, but when you do go to parties out here, you know, wine is really as abundant at a party as water is. You know, everyone's always just pouring wine and pretty freely usually. But they are also always kind of talking about it in very sort of high tech. I think I wrote it in an email, like high tech wine geek speak is what I like to call it. And I feel like that sometimes there's a little too much of that people, you know, may be intimidated by some of that lingo because it's like, oh, what does all that mean? And, you know, so I feel like there's kind of like two schools of thought on that, of people that get very into, like I was at a wine writer symposium, this was a couple of years ago, and someone was just talking about a wine and that it tasted like mossy, wet pebbles after a rainstorm. You know, it was something like, wow,
How do you know what that tastes like?
Exactly, and who would want to go taste that?
So, right. So I think a lot of it, I mean, I always tell people that a lot of the terminology and things, it is kind of very unique to the person. You know, sometimes someone might smell something and, you know, and everyone's very big on swirling. You have to swirl. And the whole point.
Why do we swirl?
The point of swirling is to open up the nose of the wine. So by swirling it, you can get an aroma of the wine. So you're technically, you know, the technically correct way, but I would say there is no correct way to taste wine. But you are supposed to swirl it because that will kind of get the juices flowing. Then you're supposed to sniff it, tip it, and then just have your nose in there. And by swirling it, it kind of opens up the aroma so that you could say, oh, I smell blackberry, or, you know, whatever it is that you may smell. But what I found is that, so if you try that, like if you swirl it, and then you just, you know, tip it in, you know, it sort of opens up.
Sorry, excuse me. Hey.
Diana's dog sitting right now, so normally she has 2 dogs who are very quiet, and right now she has 5 dogs.
Yeah, I have 2 3-year-olds that could pass through the door at any moment, although I've locked the door so that they cannot. But
yeah, I just shut the door on them. I don't know what they're barking at. Probably the neighbors. So at first I scolded them, and I was like, ah, screw it. Just close the door when I'm barking. If I hear them scratching, maybe I'll let them back in.
Now, as a disclaimer, Diana called me out on this before you joined us, Christina. These are not ice cubes. These are the little plastic things that you freeze and put in, so you're not diluting it.
Yes.
I totally forgot to put this in the refrigerator to chill it before we got home, because I'm doing a big family reunion, so much of my family has rented a house, and my mom and the kids and I are staying at a condo down the street. But this is dedication. We forgot the bottle of wine that I was going to drink for the show, and we drove back just to pick up a bottle of wine.
That's very
That
impressive.
is dedication. That is awesome.
I could have had what we already had with us, but I really wanted this one.
And which one are you drinking? Is that the Dark Horse, or that's?
No, it's a Pinot Grigio, the hero and villain one.
Oh, okay, that's the hero villain.
And it is from California also.
Okay.
Now, California, is that the leading wine producer for the United States?
It's all kind of calculated in all different ways. I mean, Napa Valley is actually kind of one of the physically smaller regions. It's like a 32-mile strip is a very narrow 32-mile strip. So it all kind of depends on how you slice, you know, it can be sliced and diced a lot of different ways. But we definitely are one of the major wine regions in the United States. But I don't know that we're the biggest one. I should know that fact, but I don't know it for sure. So
okay, so now I've got another tasting question for you. So I'm preparing for a trip to France, and that's basically just going to be a drunken week. I'm just going to flow through that vacation on a sea of wine. That's my plan. So I was watching a thing on it, and the person in France, they were talking about how you're supposed to actually taste the wine, and she was like basically chewing the wine.
Yeah. I mean, what you'll see some people do is, okay, after you swirl it, and if you want to sniff it, you sniff it. And then you'll see people that you taste it and you do that. Some people then spit it back out afterwards. But by kind of keeping it in your mouth, I can't even describe what it is, but sort of like, it's like swishing it in your mouth, going like, and then tasting, you get the full, like it rolls over your tongue, so you get a kind of a more full taste of the wine, like it kind of hits on the back palate of your mouth. And people, when they're wine tasting, like the true sort of, you know, the people that are scoring wines and all of that, I mean, most of the time they're drinking and spitting, and that's what they'll do. They'll take it and then they'll spit it back out. But by doing that, you can actually taste the wine kind of more intensely than if you just, you know, drink it and then it goes back.
So now with the spitting, is there a technical reason for that, or they just don't want to get drunk?
Right. It's usually they just don't want to get drunk, because it's some of these tastings. I mean, they may in a 3-hour period be tasting 70 wines, and so. There's just no way you could be drinking all of that. And so yeah, they will
challenge accepted.
Drink it, you know, get the taste and then spit it back out and then move on to the next one. It's kind of a fun and interesting and bizarre thing to actually see kind of one of those tastings going down, because truly, you know, they're just like, you know, on to the next. And it is somewhat of an assembly line. And and that's when you might hear the term like palate fatigue. Like, you know, sometimes people, when they come out here, they'll be like, I'm going to go to 10 wineries today. And it's after a certain point, if you're not spitting, you know, 3 wineries in, you're really not going to be able to taste the difference between any of them at that point, because you know, if you're truly drinking every full taste as you go, you will have what they call palate fatigue, which is just what it sounds like. Your tongue is tired. So.
The rest of you probably isn't that far behind either.
Well, right. Yes. It is a grueling. I'll say sometimes, oh yeah, it's a tough day on the tasting trail today, because it is. It can be hard work. And in France, you know, you'll have to pace yourself, because it is. You do. It's just kind of, for some reason, physically tiring when you go wine tasting.
Yes, now I understand why I was looking at a tour, because my sister lives over in the Alsace region, and. Yeah, so we're looking at doing the wine route there, and I was looking at the tours, and they only do like 2 wineries, 3 tops, and
yeah.
I was like, it doesn't seem like much, but now I know. Okay, 3 is going to be
3 is good. Yeah, 3 is actually probably a really good amount. When people come out here and visit, I recommend don't really do more than 3. If you really, really want to push it 4, but that 4th one, you're not really gonna. You know, you're gonna. I don't think it's gonna be totally accurate of what you're tasting is what you think you're tasting. That's just my personal opinion. But when you're there, you know, you want to do as much as you possibly can. So it's hard to.
Exactly.
So where did, in between, I mean, you mentioned you have 2 3-year-olds, and then you do your food and wine writing. Where did the dating bender fit into your life while you were working on it?
Yeah, I actually, when I started out, I wasn't really, I didn't start out to write a book. I just was, at the time when I started it, I was living in LA, and I had lived in New York prior to that. And I just was like, I just had some really over the top dates where I just was like, this is crazy. Like, someone, you know, like, you couldn't make this up. Like, I had this one date where it was a friend of mine, a really well-intended friend's husband, was like, oh, I've got the perfect guy for you. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. Okay, I'll do it. And it was, so anyway, it was a setup, and I'll just give you the very quick lowlights, but just to give you an example of like how the book kind of began. He showed up in a limo. I lived in Venice Beach, and he showed up in a limo, which I guess in some ways might have been someone's dream come true. Prince Charming sweeps in a limo. But on a first date in Los Angeles, it was cause for pause, because just like, oh, you're like, all right. And then he proceeded to, you know, whisk me to, you know, different places, which that was all fine. We went from Santa Monica to Hollywood. But every time we stopped somewhere, he would disappear for 20 minutes, half hour, whatever. He would come back in a completely different outfit. He was just like, changing outfit. And yeah, exactly. The first time.
You went on a date with Dress Up Ken.
Right. When he picked me up in the limo and he was wearing like this leopard shirt and silk pants. And I just was like, oh.
Wait. Leopard shirt and silk pants?
Yeah.
Really?
It was really just kind of bizarre look. And with the limo, you know, I thought I should have just not gotten in the limo. But because it was a friend, I sort of felt obligated to, you know, to just see it through. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he proceeded to just change outfits throughout the course of the night. And it just went crazier from there. And so, but that was just one of a sea of just kind of off the wall, odd, crazy scenarios. So I was like, I just have to write these. Some of the things were just so crazy. I just was like, I have to just write them down. And so, you know, the longer I was in LA, the more that these things, I was like, I got to just write this down. And then I just sort of was like, this is kind of shaping up to be something. And at the same time, I also was, I had written an essay about firing your family, the idea of like, firing your family, you know, and if, you know, a family is just kind of not cooperating the way you would like them to cooperate, like, you know, can you ever hand your family a pink slip was kind of like the premise of it. And those two sort of things, the sort of over the top crazy dating scene and just that premise of like, can you ever really fire your family? And what would that mean if you did? Sort of came together, and so I started sort of thinking, oh, I think this might be a book, and so I just kind of wrote it in bursts and pieces, and then somewhere, you know, I got a little sick of LA and I moved to Napa Valley, and I just continued writing the book. I had the twins kind of in the middle of that, so then it was on hiatus. The book kind of I had written it, you know, somewhat pretty quickly, but then it kind of went on the back burner for a while the twins were happening.
Oh my goodness, yeah, twins. I mean, I know Michelle, I could see her like her face there, because I mean, twins, you've got double duty at the same time.
Yeah.
Michelle's got you've got what, 3? Lily's 3 now, and Landon's almost 2.
Oh. Yeah, and one of them is awake and has either deliberately or accidentally hit the volume button on the TV, and I can hear it blaring in the other room.
Yeah, to a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, I mean, that's close to twins. I mean, just having their toddlers together, which is, so the book kind of, the book was happening in stages, but that was the premise of how it began, kind of like that sort of all the crazy sort of dating moments, and then that family kind of, then you throw just sort of a dysfunctional family unit into the mix and watch it all explode. And that's kind of how the book became to be. And
relatable too. Like, and forgive me, Michelle, you're going to hate me, but who's the author that you love, that you talk about all the time?
Emily Giffin.
The one that I'm not into, Something Borrowed?
Yes, Emily Giffin. I love her.
Yeah.
It sounds very Emily Giffin. So I think if people like Emily Giffin, they're going to like your book.
I think so, yeah, because I think the characters are in her book, and especially the Something Borrowed, like the two women in the book are, you know, they're flawed. They're not perfect women. And their friendship as women girlfriends is not perfect. And so I very much, I'd like to say that my book, a fan of Emily Giffin would be a fan of my book. And I think because I really believe in writing kind of flawed characters. I love, like, Maria Semple is another one of my favorite authors, because she just writes, I feel like real women struggling in all the kind of gnarly glory that it is to be a woman. You know, it's an amazing thing. It's a crazy thing. And so I enjoy writing dysfunctional characters because I feel like that's real. You know, we're all not fabulous all the time. In fact, you know, I feel the opposite of fabulous most of the time. And so, so I feel like in my writing, I like to explore that fact that, you know, relationships always don't go the way you want, and female relationships aren't always great, and family relationships are, you know, can be struggles at times. And I just feel like there's a lot of humor in those scenarios too, you know, when things happen and then you look back on it and you're like, wow, that was crazy when it was happening, but it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny when you think about it. So I enjoy the kind of finding the humor in the drama and chaos of life. And in my book, that's, you know, a lot of what's in there is just, you know, there's a lot of funny in life's just triumphs and tragedies. At least I think so.
Well, it's kind of, you know, I think an interesting thing that you say you like writing about flawed characters, especially today where everyone, you know, we're all on social media, we all post pictures and everything, but you know, when I take pictures during the day, I take literally, maybe not literally, okay, we're good, figuratively, 1,000 pictures. And then at the end of the day, I like go through and I pick out the ones that I like best, that are like the most perfect, and then I'll post those. So, you know, a lot of people see like the perfect image of our lives on Facebook. And then when you get behind the surface, you see that things aren't so perfect. So writing about these flawed characters and reading about them, I think really helps people keep like it's like a reality check. Like it's not all perfect that what you see on, you know, on Facebook or wherever.
Yeah. And I think that's what I hope people take away from the book is that, yeah, I mean, I think there are those amazing, the Facebook moments that when it is all just happening, all the stars are colliding in the right way. But then there's the days where they all just bomb and hit each other and it's, you know, it all explodes. And so I think that hopefully people relate to that it's like, wow, I'm not the only one that, you know, does this crazy thing when such and such happens. Like, I hope that people, you know, kind of enjoy that aspect of things, that it's not all rosy, rose-colored wine glasses, at least.
Well, I don't know, that date's pretty bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The worst date that
so many books with these dates, I tell you.
the worst date that I ever went on was a first date to a wedding, which was like, should have been, you know, red flag number one.
Yeah.
And then he stopped at the mall. We stopped at the mall on the way back because he wanted to pick something up, and I thought it was going to be a quick stop, like whatever. I lived right by the mall. And he went through the men's clothing section and said, "Oh, if you want me to try anything on, just let me know and I'll try it on for you."
Oh boy.
And I was still living at home at the time, and I really didn't want this guy to try to kiss me goodnight. So I texted my mom and I said, "Please open the door when you hear us come up." like kill the mood. So she opened the door and she wasn't going to be rude, so she invited the guy in, and I thought he would be like, "Oh, you know, no, that's okay." But he was like, "Oh, sure, I'll come in." And then he sat with us for 2 hours and watched the Grammys with us.
Oh my god. You haven't told me about this date.
Oh my god, it was so bad. It was awful. But he didn't do outfit changes mid-date. That's worse.
I had been married to my husband for so long that I barely remember dates that I went on before I met him, because I was in college. We got married when I was in my early 20s. Okay. And I find myself, as I hear everybody else's dating story, quoting when Harry met Sally to him like all the time, going, "Promise me I'll never be single again." Promise me. Because I hear this stuff and I see this stuff and I'm like, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this drama. I'll end up a hermit.
Yeah. I know. I always would say, like, please don't make me go back out there. Please, no.
It's exhausting. Just the thought of it is exhausting.
It is, yeah. I know. When I think about the single days And yeah, it was, I mean, there were definitely, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I lived in New York and I lived in LA, and I always say they're the two kind of best and worst dating capitals in the country, I think, depending on how you look at it and, you know, who you're talking to. And I think it was a lot of fun, but yeah, it was also, it was like a sport. It was just like, okay, got to get here, go there, do, you know, it was grueling at times. So, but yeah, it's a field day for just crazy happenings and things to write about because, yeah, I could fill another book with just like, all the crazy, a lot of crazy.
All the crazy. That's how writers get their ideas.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, thank you, Christina, so much for joining us. It was so much fun and educational. I think Michelle and I now know how to better taste our wines, so we can move beyond whether or not it's good or bad.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It was great fun, and I hope you guys enjoy your wine and rest of the night.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on.
Bye. Bye-bye.
And congratulations on your book. We'll be sure to pick it up when it comes out.
Yes, and you were mentioning that you have a book launch party?
Yeah, there's a launch party coming up next Friday, a few days after the book comes out. And yeah, and then there's a big literary festival in San Francisco in October called Litquake. And I'm going to be on a panel there that's about like catching your first big break. So it's a handful of debut authors all kind of telling our war stories of publication. It's right up there with the dating the dating trench.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks.
So this week,
can't tell.
Sorry. See where I think there's a little hang up there, up at the top.
Well, you're welcome. If you want to hang out and listen to our conversation about our book of the month, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I'm just all right. I'll hang on until I can figure out so that the toddlers don't hop on the call.
And my dogs have already run around and made a bunch of noise, and Michelle's toddlers have shown up, so it's all good.
All right, bye guys. Thanks.
Bye. So, fill us in on where you're at on The Fortune Teller.
Yes. So, as most of you know, and if I don't say something now, they'll never let me live it down. But for my cousins who could still be up watching this, they said they were going to put me on Apple TV on the big screen. My mom must still be awake, and she heard my story about my bad date, and she goes, "Did you say that I invited a total stranger in our home to watch TV with us?" Yes, you definitely did, because you didn't want to be rude to my awful date.
Because your mother is the nicest person in the world, and I can't see her being rude to anyone. Really, I mean, it's something very much your mother could do. Because I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be a perfect stranger because it's your date. So I mean, that's just fun for you.
So this month we're reading The Fortune Teller.
Yes.
By Gwendolyn Womack.
Yes.
And so I'm probably about like 100 pages away from being done, and I've definitely reached that point where you can't put the book down. Mm-hmm. This has coincided well with the return of afternoon naps for Lily and Landon, so I've been able to actually read. I love this book for many reasons, mm-hmm. but one of the things that it has made me want to do is travel the world and see all the libraries in it. Mm-hmm. And I want to go to this Beinecke library in.
What book nerd you are, because you want to travel the world and see all of the libraries. That's what you get out of the book. Me, I'm like, ooh, Egyptology stuff. I want to look at more of this stuff and study more of this stuff. And you're like, hey, more libraries. This is gonna be my bucket list.
Well, I mean, okay, the tarot, I had to research one of the characters because I felt like, you know, when you're writing historical fiction, you can kind of sneak in some prominent historical figures in as like passing characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at Aisha's story where she's in Paris and she's playing the harp for the high society woman who has all of her.
Let's stop there and just talk about Aisha for a moment. I love her. She's great.
I do. I love her grandmother.
Yes, that too.
I think it's really interesting to watch how the cards have passed from one person to another. And the first time I forget her name. The first time that the cards left the family, when the husband traded them for room and board when his wife was about to have the baby. That whole scene when he was like offering them up, I was just standing there going, no! Don't give the cards away.
But his pregnant wife needed a place to give birth and rest and have shelter. And I mean, I think that where she would have said, okay, if it's between my kid or my future like great granddaughter or what have you, to have a place of safety, or the cards, what mother wouldn't choose a place of safety?
But she didn't choose it. The husband chose it, and she knew she wasn't going to survive anyway.
Okay, then. You won that argument.
But this is one of those books. This is for me like the Da Vinci Code. This is one of those books that makes me want to obsess over libraries. Alexandria, well, that's a library, but Alexandria, and then Egyptology and the history of tarot. There's so many themes in this book that you just want to research all of them. And I want someone to do a tarot reading for me.
Right. Well, we're having a psychic on next week.
Yes, next Saturday. Special bonus episode. Yay!
Bonus episode. And is she going to be doing a tarot reading for us, or is she just going to be doing a psychic thing?
I think it's just going to be a chat. She doesn't do tarot cards. She's a psychic, so she's more on the supernatural side of it versus the card reading. I think it's really interesting, though, that according, to the history of the playing cards, that they didn't start out as tarot cards. It was one man's interpretation of the cards, and that's how it launched into what they are today. So I thought that was really interesting. That I always kind of figured they were cards that were made specifically for tarot reading and reading people's futures, and it was just one man who thought that they held the divine knowledge of Egypt, which seems a little much to expect from a deck of cards.
It is, but it's still interesting. It's still fascinating, and I love that story too in Italy. I thought that was a really charming, sweet story.
I love that she's spanning so much of history in it, because now she's already in Paris right before the Revolution, and she mentions in passing the American Revolution. So you're in the 1700s when it started out in Alexandria and Egypt and Cleopatra.
She does a lot. She did that with the memory painter as well, where it spanned a lot of history.
But she weaves it together so nicely and so well that it's not confusing. You're not sitting there going, wait, what just happened? Like, where am I?
Yeah, I love these little interludes of the story where you get the main story itself, what's going on with Simile, and then you've got the those text messages, which we are going to talk about in a moment, and you've got this backstory that's happening in the manuscript, and it just weaves so well that, okay, so for those of you who follow my Instagram, you will have seen the never-ending story reference. When, where he's covered up in the blanket and he's like, oh my God, reading this story. Now, Michelle, do you understand, for those of you who are at this point in the book, because, mind you, we are reading up to page 2, talking about up to page 250. So up to page 250, there will be spoilers if you have not read that far. That's the warning.
Okay, I'm not at page 250. I'm at page 226.
220. Okay. All right. You said about 100 pages, so I assumed. All right. So let's see where you're at on 220. All right. So that I know not to spoil things for you, since I'm already finished, because this book is awesome. Okay.
So I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I see where you're at. So yeah, I love how they span in between and they interlude, and then with that reference to never-ending story, there's a point where the manuscript, it doesn't just reach out to Simile and talk to Simile directly. It reaches out to you and talks to you directly, I feel like. Because when I read, there's one particular part in the manuscript, in the Iona's manuscript, where she's talking to Simile, and you're reading it like you're Simile, basically. And it's like you've got the manuscript in your hands and you're reading it like her, and she's like, she does, it's almost like this boo. And because I don't want to give it too much away, just in case somebody's listening who hasn't read it, she's like, it's basically a boo kind of thing. And for me, when I was reading it, I jumped and I looked around like,
it's almost like a tap on the shoulder.
Huh? What was that?
It's like a tap on the shoulder. That's
yeah, exactly it.
Oh. Sorry, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and okay, fantasy. Who are we thinking for Kate?
I don't know, because Cape's got to be. Here's the thing about Cape. I love Cape. He is a good guy. He is way too freaking good for Rena. I'm just gonna say it. I love to hate Rena. Absolutely love to hate her, but he's that good guy that you're friends with, and he's always that good guy and always really nice, but then he's too nice. And it feels like he's forever friend zoned by girls, and then he finally gets this, gorgeous girl, because I'm assuming Rena's gorgeous, especially since I am casting Kenzie from Lost Girl, which her name is, I can't remember, is it Kenzia, or I can't remember what her real name is. And she's beautiful, so she would make a perfect Rena. But yeah, for Cape, I don't know yet.
I'm trying to picture all the guys who have been friend zoned in movies and TV shows, because he's definitely the guy who would be friend zoned. Did
you watch The Office? Because I didn't, and I'm hoping you did, because I can picture the guy, but I can't.
Are you thinking of John Krasinski? That would work.
Yeah. Yes, I am. That's who I was thinking of. Whoops, wrong Office. Because he's definitely, for me, that he fits the idea of Cape, where he's just like the super nice guy. He's a little bit nerdy. And I put in the Cape for IMDb. But yeah, I think that would fit for Cape. And he's kind of got that cute nerdy thing. Yeah, John Krasinski. He's kind of got that cute nerd boy thing going for him. Or Zachary Levi from Chuck and Rapunzel, even though he was a voice, obviously. He would be another good one, too, where he could pull off that nerdy guy who you can just picture as your friend, totally your friend, and then, still has that cute nerd boy thing going for him.
Well, I have a feeling I'm definitely going to finish this book by next episode. I might stay up and read it tonight, since I'm already up and it's past midnight. might as well.
Yeah, so I'm not done talking about Cabe though. What are your thoughts on him? Because you haven't really given me your thoughts on him.
Okay. I don't know how large of a role he's going to play in the rest of the book. I really like him. I hope he plays a larger part. The text messages from VS, whoever the hell VS is, to and from, it's to and from VS. And the whole time I'm thinking it's someone who is helping, and then you reach a point, and I mean, they could still be someone helping her, but I'm starting to think that these are people who are working against her, because they start talking about, oh, it's coming back. Theo is another huge question mark, and I don't really know if I like him very much. And you know things, and I know you know things, and I know you want to say things.
I don't want to say things, but I'm putting the book in my mouth so
that I don't know. I don't know what's going on with this VS. I'm not even going to look at you right now.
Because it's going to drive you nuts, and you're not going to get it until you're either going to get it at the end of the book, or it's going to hit you like it did me about a half an hour after finishing reading the book. But there
is Cabe like? Is Cabe or what?
Well, is Cabe what?
Is Cabe like her person? Is that who she's supposed to be with?
No.
No?
No.
It's Theo, isn't it?
Friend. Well, duh. Of course it's Theo. Totally Team Theo right here.
I don't know. I really like Cabe. So I would have been, and poor Bren. Like, no one even cares about Bren.
I know. Well, I mean, Bren is kind of a douchebag. I'm going to say it. He's kind of a douche.
He's sweet, but he's too sweet. Unfortunately, guys, you don't want. You don't want the jerk who like treats you like crap, but you don't want the uber nice guy who leaves voicemails of poetry on your phone, because I'm sure that's sweet. And I know I'm contradicting myself because last week I was all about the voicemail poems, but like that gets old. I think, I would imagine.
Yeah, it gets old.
I'm backtracking on my previous statement.
Well, I'm the kind of girl who thinks like everyday stuff is romantic. Like my husband remembering to DVR one of my favorite shows while I'm in class. That I found romantic. Giving me comic books for Valentine's Day. That I totally found romantic. He gave me 12 Wonder Woman comics instead of roses. Much more romantic. Leaving me poetry, which I'm not a huge poetry fan. It gets old after a while, but Bren, he reminds me of those guys. They're kind of almost toxic, where they're super nice guys. They play the super nice guy, and they do stuff that annoys the girl. And when the girl finally breaks up with them, they turn into the jerk, where they're like, oh, I'm going to write a song about you, but it's not really about you because, you're the bitch that broke my heart kind of thing. They're just, they get kind of passive aggressive after the breakup, and he strikes me as that guy. And he's probably complaining to his buddies, I was perfect, I did everything right, I don't know why she doesn't like me. Which, sometimes it's like that stupid dating book, she's just not that into you. Sometimes that just happens. Sometimes she has sex with you and sees you off married to somebody else with kids. It happens. So, since I brought that up, let's discuss that sex scene. Your thoughts, Michelle?
Which scene? Sorry.
The sex scene.
On which scene? Sorry. The audio cut out for just a second.
Yeah, she's a whole other future for her boyfriend while she's doing him.
Now, that was awesome at the same time. Like, if that's what brings around her premonitions, that's like, oh damn, I need a premonition. But like at the same time, how do you, okay, so she's obviously gonna break up with Bren. And he's not the type who is just gonna take, we're not meant to be together. He's gonna want a reason and what brought this on. So how is she gonna tell? Because the last time I had a video with your kids and your wife wasn't me.
Yeah. That's
So,
kind of, it sounds, if I was the dude, I would sound made up to me. That would totally sound made up to me. I think she would come up with a better excuse, in all honesty, even though she was being honest with him, which is, you know, kudos to her for being honest with him. But it's something really hard to believe. And I think it also goes to show how he wasn't right for her, because if he was actually right for her, he would give her the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Is that how she breaks up with him? Because I haven't gotten that far yet.
Oh,
but
I am sorry. Yes, that is how she breaks up with him, by telling him that I saw somebody else with you and it wasn't me. I thought because you said that.
Diana.
Huh?
Diana. Spoilers.
Dude, you said it.
Spoilers.
I need to rewind this. You said.
I guess.
Well, I'm not giving away a huge spoiler. We know that they're going to end up
anyway,
because they don't belong together, because you saw that sex scene, or you saw that sex scene. You read that sex scene.
Yes, I know. That, I guess, okay, that was a pretty easy guess to make, because we know that Semele wouldn't make something up. She would just tell him the truth.
Right.
So.
Because our girl's honest.
Yeah.
Even if it gets her in trouble.
But, so everyone keep reading, even though we know how Semele breaks up with Bren. And we're gonna have 2 next Thursday. Will be Diana and I obsessing over the book. And then Saturday we will have our bonus episode with Liz, which will be a lot of fun. That's going to be on a special time. The time is still being ironed out, so stay tuned for that. And I think that's it for this evening.
That is it, but let's not forget to remind everybody. So right now we've got a giveaway happening on Raffle Chapter, and we will tweet out and message out the link again. But Gwen has been wonderful. We're giving away, you get either a signed copy of The Fortune Teller or a signed copy of The Memory Painter. And you can enter in on Rafflecopter to be able to actually get an entry. You have to either follow Gwen on Twitter, like her Facebook page, or subscribe to our page, our YouTube channel. So yes, you
So do all 3, and then you can have 3 chances.
Yeah, 3 chances to win a book. And so we're doing one or the other. This way we can have 2 winners. So each one's going to be drawn at random. So yay. So subscribe, enter in, and join us next week.
Have a good night, everyone.